Alright everyone, British news update, which is the EU has just granted, like the UK had said, we're not going to go through with the no-deal Brexit that looked like it was looming before. They wanted months of extra clearance, basically, to continue negotiating internally. The EU has said, okay, 2 weeks, we'll give you this extension. That's basically it though, you can't kick the can down the road forever, it's impossible, you can't keep being in this gray area. Now, again, take with a grain of salt because they've said that before. It's entirely possible. Like Theresa May is not going to be able to find a deal that the EU will reasonably agree with. Not when they've gotten so many concessions from the UK. It's obvious that some of the member states are legitimately not interested in sharing the EU with the British anymore. They're not going to sign on to any deal that remotely resembles anything Theresa May can get passed because Labour doesn't want to vote for it because she's a Tory. The Tories don't want to vote for it because half of them are Brexiteers. Where's her coalition? How is she even still in power? How haven't they kicked her out by now? Nobody likes her. She has managed to unite all of Britain in disdain for her. She's managed to unite all of Europe with the British people in mutual disdain for her. Trump thinks that she's crazy, but fucking everyone. Nobody likes Theresa May. To the point where the UK, like the Remainers, they're all worried about becoming like a pariah state somehow. Trust me, the US, Canada, all of these other countries, we are fucking lining up to give you favorable trade deals. We're lining up to sell you American shit right now and buy British shit from you, which was harder before when you were under the umbrella of the EU. The US economy, my friend, is just as big as the rest of the European Union combined with the UK added in on top. So you're not losing anything by having a no-deal Brexit. I'll tell you what will end up happening, though. The globalists in your country will spread fear and chaos. They will, like with their stupid story there about, well, there's a doomsday bunker here in the UK that's being prepared in the case of a no-deal Brexit. Why the hell would leaving a trade union, which supposedly is not meant to be post-national at all, according to everyone that designed it, why would that cause a nuclear conflict? What are you talking about? Oh my god, we gotta get into the bunker, the whole world is going to end. No, fuck that, that's fear-mongering bullshit. The fact that that can even be peddled by what you call a free press over there in the UK should give you cause for pause. Apparently it doesn't, generally speaking. So I would expect the possibility of a no-deal Brexit, with the caveat that they're going to use that, it's a preface on using the no-deal Brexit to try to create chaos, cause the economy to collapse. They'll do everything behind the scenes that they can to make your currency hyperinflate or to make spiraling unemployment. They're going to try to get businesses to leave because remember, if I'm a globalist, if I've got money in 5 or 6 different countries, do I give a fuck if one of those businesses goes out of business in the UK so long as I'm moving it to one of those other countries? No, fuck that, I don't give a shit. I'm still going to be able to travel between them. I'm some rich bitch who can fly first class, no problem. It's not going to be like for the little peons. So all the globalists that own the major banks, the largest corporations, the publishers and the press and stuff like that, they don't care if the UK collapses pretty much entirely out of existence. They don't care. It's not like in the past, like maybe 200 years ago. Nation suffers a downturn, even the wealthy, like the plutocrat class or something, they suffered. Maybe relatively less in some cases. Some of them had made, all sorts of investments. They had invested, people back in the rail baron days, the collapse comes, the Great Depression, and they happened to have heavily invested in things like farm equipment or seed catalogs or something. They did okay. They maintained some degree of wealth. Those that put all their eggs in one basket, they're like, well, I am the main rail man of all of the western United States. Oh shit, nobody's using rail because they can't afford it. Well, I guess I'm up shit creek without a paddle. That's not the way wealth works anymore. The way wealth works now at the top class is no longer, I happen to be really, really big in this nation. I'm a bloated plutocrat with a top hat and a cigar. Meh. It's not how it works. It's more like some slick-back dude who has holdings in 5 or 6 different countries. He no longer cares about the people that he supposedly is a compatriot with. He's no longer a citizen of his own nation. He's a multinationalist, a globalist. This is the problem of economic globalism. The UK will suffer if there's a no-deal Brexit. What'll happen is that they will cause problems and blame Brexit. But it'll really be their own fault at the end of the day. They will deliberately attempt to bring the economy down to cause enough suffering so that they can again use their state-run and state-sanctioned propaganda press to tell you, well, there's an easy solution, folks. I'm sorry that you're in a breadline. I'm sorry unemployment doubled. I'm sorry that crime skyrocketed because people weren't getting their pension checks and had to go rob little old granny. We're sorry about that, blokes and chaps. There's an easy solution. Let's go and beg and suck cock with the EU again. But the thing is, according to the deal initially that Theresa May fronted to Parliament, if you read it, was basically being in the EU without voting in the EU. It was total fealty. Here you are, you've got this supposedly proud culture, you're one of the top 10 economies, still a major military player, a nuclear power, and you're acting like you have no cards, to field in your hand. You're acting like your enemy just has all of the cards and you're sitting there with the two of clubs and nothing else. That's not the way that negotiations should be done. Trump was awestruck when that happened. I think honestly taken aback at how poor it was. I think a lot of people at first didn't realize the reason for that was always deliberate. The whole point is that Theresa May was a Remainer, not a Brexiteer. She doesn't want to leave the EU. But if they do, they're going to make it as painful as possible. They want to drag it out, make people paranoid and sad and stuff, and cause economic problems so that people will rejoin thereafter. Essentially, a no-deal Brexit is what people there voted for. I have no doubt that most of the people who voted in favor of Brexit did so with the understanding, the thought at least in their head, that very quickly the UK would leave the EU and it'd be a great patriotic moment, and it'd be like, okay, now we can make trade deals and stuff. The idea that you immediately begin trying to hammer something back together that's pretty much the same as before for stability or for sameness' sake doesn't make any sense unless you assume that it's a sabotage job. The way in which the negotiations have been carried out, the person doing them, what she has said, etc., only makes reasonable sense if the intent was not to end up having a Brexit. Either to cause people to demand a second referendum, which never materialized, or, as their final contingency, have a hard Brexit, which I believe now they will eventually have. It could be in as little as 2 weeks. They will have the hard Brexit, the economy there will downturn, or they will try to make it downturn, we'll see what happens, and then they'll tell you, well, we'll just have another referendum. Yeah, we had the will of the people, we had our Brexit, okay, we fulfilled the democracy that doesn't exist here. We fulfilled our democratic principles, now we're going to have another vote. Ha, another generation of Britons is being raised. They have a say in whether they want to be back in Europe or be alone and sad, and it'll be terrible. They'll be like a nation state like anyone else. That was Farage's big thing. It's like, why can't we trade and conduct travel and everything else like a normal sovereign state? The EU doesn't make sense anymore, especially for the more wealthy nations. The Eastern Europeans, populistic as they're becoming over time, we'd be talking about the Netherlands is Western Europe, but populism rising all over the place, especially in Eastern Europe very early on over the migrant issue. They're the ones trying to glue the EU together. It's just the Germans and the French, their governments want to go hard, want to punish people if they want to separate. They want to punish people for not being part of the status quo. Whereas the sort of Polish model for the EU would be, let's, just chill out, be together. We want to maintain our cultures. We're all brothers in arms. There's no reason to fuck each other over. Let's try to make things better in a benevolent way. Because they were behind the Iron Curtain and they know what a post-national system can be at its worst. The Western Europeans don't realize the danger of what they're doing. Yes, tyranny can come to Western Europe. And if it comes there, it'll be under one banner of Europe. It's not going to come with a swastika or a hammer and sickle. It's going to come with the flag of the European Union. You already see they're already trying to abuse people that you were like, oh, you're our brothers, don't leave, oh, we love you so much. And then everyone turns around and stabs them in the back as soon as they decide to exercise sovereignty and pretends like it's the end of the world. And their press there that can't be trusted is saying we've got a nuclear bunker option and weird shit like that. That doesn't make any sense at all. It's like tabloid bullshit. That's about all. Peace out.